Welcome back to the deep dive. If you've ever loved that classic modulation sound, but maybe hated the technical hassles that often came with vintage gear, then this deep dive is definitely for you.
Yeah.
Today, we're unpacking a modern fix in a really small package. The MXR M279 Deep Phase Pedal.
This one's a really great example of, modern engineering looking back at tradition, but also fixing the old problems. Our mission today is pretty straightforward, actually.
Okay.
We're going to look at how this one little pedal, it's got just two knobs and a switch. Super simple how it manages to cover the whole range of phasing, like from that soft vintage kind of swirl all the way to these deep, really flexible psychedelic sweeps. It's kind of like a shortcut to understanding phase effects without needing, a vintage power supply and all that stuff.
Yeah, and when you first see it, that tiny mini chassis, you might think, okay, limited features. But the sources we looked at suggest it's way more versatile and technically quite smart. So let's jump right into maybe the biggest problem the M279 was designed to solve.
Okay, so the legacy stuff. Anyone who's used like a classic phaser, especially those famous 70s four-stage ones, they know the drill.
Oh, yeah.
You're playing, you step on the pedal, and whoosh, your volume just drops noticeably. It just kills your presence in the mix sometimes.
It's that classic volume suck. And it was a problem with pretty much all the early modulation effects. It's fascinating, the engineering reason behind it.
What was it?
Well, these vintage circuits, they often used passive signal mixing, resistive loading. Basically, they drew power from your signal path.
Oh, okay.
Which creates something called insertion loss. So you get the cool sound, but you lose signal level, you lose punch. It compromises the signal integrity.
Right. So the M279 wasn't just about copying the vintage sound. It was about getting that sound without the downside. How did MXR manage to keep that classic, swirl and swoosh character, but also keep the volume up?
The key thing is active compensation. They use robust internal buffering. Good quality buffers.
So the M279 can give you that recognized mid-scoop phase thing, but it actively boosts the signal back up to unity gain.
Unity gain meaning?
Meaning the output level is the same whether the pedal is on or off. So when you kick it in, your amp's volume stays consistent. You get the tone, no volume drop. That's huge for playing live or, recording.
And that focus on signal integrity, it doesn't just end with volume, right? The sources also mention high headroom and true bypass switching. We throw these terms around a lot.
Yeah, we do.
But for someone maybe upgrading, why does high headroom really matter for this kind of pedal?
Well, think of headroom as like a safety margin for dynamics. If you've got hot pickups, or maybe you put the deep phase after a really loud boost or overdrive, your signal voltage is going to be high. If the pedal circuitry can't handle that not enough headroom, that hot signal clips inside the pedal, it distorts prematurely.
Okay, like a bad kind of distortion.
Exactly, like unpleasant, fuzzy, square wave distortion. High headroom just means the pedal can take those strong signals cleanly. It preserves your guitar's dynamics.
Gotcha. And true bypass, that seems pretty standard now, but maybe worth mentioning why it keeps the M279 clean when it's off.
Absolutely. True bypass just means when the effect is off, your signal completely skips the internal circuitry. It's a direct mechanical connection from input to output.
Like it's not even there.
Pretty much, which is vital if you have a lot of pedals and want to keep your core tone intact. There's always the buffered bypass debate, but with the M279, when that phase is off, your signal is just pure, untouched, exactly what you want.
Okay, so signal stability is sorted. Now, how do we actually, shape the phase effect itself? The M279 looks simple outside. Just two main knobs, seed and FDBK. Let's start there.
Right. So speed is pretty self-explanatory. It controls the rate, the speed of the effect driven by the LFO, the low-frequency oscillator. And the range on this thing is actually quite wide for a mini pedal. It goes from about 0.15 hertz.
Super slow.
Yeah, glacial slow. Up to almost 50 hertz.
Whoa, wait, 50 hertz. Phasers are usually thought of as these slow, sweeping things. What does 50 hertz even sound like?
That's where it gets interesting. At 0.15 hertz, it's that super slow underwater drift. You barely notice it moving sometimes. Great for ambient stuff. But crank it to 50 hertz. You're not really in phaser territory anymore. It starts bordering on like ring modulation or this really fast, frantic, almost metallic warble.
So a huge creative range then.
Massive. Way beyond just standard sweep rates.
Okay. And the FDBK knob. That's the intensity, the character.
Exactly. FDBK is feedback. It controls how much of that processed phase sound gets fed back into the circuit's input again. Think of it like resonance.
Oh.
The higher you turn it, the sharper, the more peaky and resonant the sound gets. That's what gives you that really aggressive whoosh sound.
Interesting. So these two knobs work together, obviously.
Yeah.
But the real secret sauce seems to be that little switch in the middle.
Yeah.
The Mobi 2 switch. That's where the versatility really comes in.
Oh, absolutely. That tiny switch completely changes the pedal's guts, basically. Mode I, the standard LED color, that's your 4-stage phaser.
The classic sound.
The classic. Smooth, subtle, vintage phasing. It gives you 2 main phase peaks sweeping through the frequencies. But flip that switch to mode 2, the LED turns amber, and boom, you're instantly in an 8-stage phaser setup.
So doubling the stages, what does that actually do to the sound? Make it deeper?
Precisely. Double the stages means double the phase peaks moving around.
Yeah.
4 major peaks sweeping. It doesn't just make it louder, it makes the effect richer, more animated, thicker, definitely thicker. The 8-stage mode gives you that really deep liquid character. That's why they call it deep phase, right? It's the difference between a subtle texture and this big, dominating, swirling thing.
And we should probably just quickly mention again the practical side. Tiny size, really low current draw. Like 18 milliamps?
Yeah, remarkably low.
For people with crowded pedal boards running off limited power, those are like major wins.
Huge advantages, yeah. Very pedal board friendly.
Okay, let's get into the sound itself. Descriptions use words like swirling, liquid, and pronounced swoosh and mid-scooped flavor. That mid-scoop thing, that seems key for the classic hollow sound. What does that feel like when you hear it?
Well, the mid-scoop just means it reduces the mid-frequencies compared to the highs and lows, so the phase shift sounds kind of hollow, almost like it moves around your main guitar tone rather than just sitting on top.
Ah, okay. Creates space.
Exactly. That's why phase can sound so dimensional.
Right. Now let's use that 4-stage, 8-stage switch. Can we dial in some specific sounds for the listeners? Say, I want that really gentle classic texture, maybe for clean rhythm, like early Pink Floyd kind of vibe.
Okay, subtlety. You want mode I, the 4-stage mode. Keep the speed knob set slow and the feedback knob quite low.
Low and slow.
Low and slow. That gives you this mellow, almost liquid butter kind of quality. It adds movement to clean chords, but it doesn't really jump out at you. It's texture, not really an effect.
Okay. What about something punchier? Maybe for like sharp funk rhythm parts, those chord pulses.
Right. You'd probably move the speed up into the mid-range, try to match the pulse of the rhythm. Bump the feedback up to maybe halfway, still in 4-stage mode probably, for clarity.
Okay.
That combination gives you a more audible, kind of throbbing pulse that can really lock into a groove. The effect is definitely there, but it doesn't swamp the clean tone.
Makes sense. And then the other end of the spectrum, the full-on, intense, psychedelic, watch the pedals named after.
Yeah, the maximalist sound. This is where you engage everything. Crank the speed high, push the feedback way up, and definitely flip that switch to mode 2, the 8-stage mode.
Go deep.
Go deep. This gives you that intense, swirling, almost chaotic wash of sound because you've got those 4 peaks moving fast and with high resonance. It just sounds incredibly liquid and dramatic. That's the setting for, soaring lead lines, or when you want the effect itself to basically be the main sound.
And that explains why the 8-stage mode gives that much bigger whoosh, right? The sweep itself feels wider, richer than the 4-stage.
Exactly. It's fundamentally deeper. If you really listen, the 4-stage swoosh feels a bit more contained, more focused, maybe. Whereas the 8-stage swoosh feels really expansive, like the sound is stretching out way beyond the speakers.
We mentioned the high headroom before, which kind of leads us to signal chain placement. With modulation, where you put it relative to your gain pedal's overdrive, distortion that can totally change the sound.
Oh, it's a huge part of the sound design, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a creative choice. If you put the M279 before your gain,
okay,
the phaser is basically shaping the signal that's getting distorted. That usually gives you a chewier, more saturated kind of sound. The phase character gets a bit mixed in, interacts with the distortion itself.
And putting it after the gain.
Putting it after the gain means the phaser is modulating the already distorted signal. That's your classic soaring lead tone.
Oh, okay.
The distortion itself stays clear, focused, and the phase effect just sweeps beautifully over the top of that grit, that really recognizable modulated solo sound. And because the M279 has that high headroom we talked about, it can handle that hot, distorted signal coming into it without breaking up or sounding mushy. So it gives you clarity either way you place it.
That's really useful. And we should also highlight something specific for bass players or people using baritones, maybe. Modulation sometimes messes with low frequencies, but this pedal is apparently quite bass-friendly.
That's a really key point, actually. A lot of standard phasers, they tend to thin out the low end or even cancel out some crucial bass frequencies, which is obviously terrible for bass.
Yeah, it kills the foundation.
Exactly. The M279 is specifically designed to handle and preserve those low frequencies really well. So bass players can use it for adding texture, movement, atmosphere.
Without losing the punch.
Right, without worrying that their fundamental low end is going to vanish in the mix. It really opens up creative options for bass modulation beyond just, say, chorus.
Okay, so summing that up.
Yeah.
It fixes the volume drop, gives you 2 distinct phase types, works well with bass, fits on any board.
And handles placement before or after dirt gracefully. It really does tick a lot of modern utility boxes while still delivering that classic tone.
All right, so if we're boiling it down, the M279's main strengths, the big pros, are clearly that dual 4-stage, 8-stage thing, fixing the volume issue, and just being compact, high headroom, and bass capable.
Yeah, that sums it up well. It's versatile, fixes old problems, and it's practical. It systematically improves on pretty much every common complaint about classic phasers.
But there's always a but, right? Relying on just 2 knobs, that minimalism, it must have some trade-offs. What should listeners maybe think about critically?
Well, yeah, critical thinking-wise, simplicity means fewer things to tweak, since it really relies just on that feedback knob for intensity. Some players, maybe more experienced ones, might miss having a dedicated depth control for the LFO.
Like separate control over how wide the sweep is versus how resonant it is.
Exactly. You're giving up some of that fine-grained control for the sake of simplicity and size. That's the trade-off.
Makes sense. And we talked about how intense that 8-stage mode can get. That power could be a double-edged sword, couldn't it? Especially with high feedback.
Oh, absolutely. When you really push it in 8-stage mode, high speed, high feedback, the effect gets incredibly intense, very resonant. For some contexts, like a subtle background part, it might just be way too much, overwhelming.
Right.
And some users did note that if you don't dial in the speed just right in those extreme settings, the sweep can almost feel a bit frantic or out of time. Chaotic, maybe?
So it needs careful handling at the extreme.
It's a powerful tool, yeah. It rewards careful tweaking.
Okay, so putting it all together, what makes the M279 really stand out in what's, let's face it, a pretty crowded market for phaser pedals?
I think it stands out because it really is like a synthesis machine. It gives you the option of that tight, musical, subtle 4-stage sound and the rich, thick, animated 8-stage sound all in one box. And crucially, it fixes that volume drop problem that plagued the very pedals it's often trying to emulate. It really feels like a modern solution designed for players who want vintage sounds without the vintage headaches. #tag outro.
So the core achievement seems to be delivering that whole spectrum, from vintage subtle right through to deep swirling textures, without making you buy multiple pedals or compromise your basic signal chain.
Yeah, it simplifies things but maximizes the sonic potential. Pretty neat engineering.
And just as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe a final thought for you to ponder. We talked about placement before or after gain making a big difference.
Right.
So consider this. What kind of unstable, maybe unpredictable sounds could you unlock by deliberately pushing that really chaotic, high feedback 8-stage mode before a low gain overdrive? Kind of using the phase peaks to mess with the overdrive circuit itself.
Instead of just smoothly sweeping over it afterwards. Interesting.
Yeah, rather than just the standard smooth sweep after the dirt. That might be something fun to experiment with on your own board.
Definitely worth exploring. Happy dialing, everyone.
We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.